Welcome to another episode of the PHNX Tailgate, brought to you by the DK, or the DraftKings Sportsbook app. I always like to say DK, America's #1 sportsbook app. Emma, run it.
Saul Bookman, Marcos Deniza Padre, South Mountain Community College Cougar, and best of all, a Wildcat from the University of Arizona.
Johnny Venerable, Maricopa, Arizona. We have a Denny's and an IHOP.
Bo Brock, the Harvard of Maricopa County, Scottsdale Community College, Fighting Artichokes.
Shane Diefenbach, North Scottsdale Circus School of Arizona. Honk, honk.
Yeah, that dirty boy Shane Diefenbach is not here today, so we'll just go ahead and move on without him. And it's probably a good thing he's not here because his beloved Sun Devils took a major L yesterday. Only major because not every high school football coach, but listen, the Arizona high school football coach train was all over Sean Aguano getting the head coaching job at ASU. And there's a reason why that shouldn't happen. And you saw it yesterday. His refusal to remove Emory Jones from the game and put in Trenton Bourguet, I think, is going to ultimately be his demise this season. What say you guys?
Well, you look at the fact that they could not score offensive touchdowns when their opponent kicked, 5 field goals, and they lost in that fashion. I mean, to me, it's an offensive league, and I give credit to a lot of the players on the team. They haven't quit. They've competed. They've battled. They've won some games they're not supposed to after the firing of Herm Edwards. But on the surface level, you have better players than Stanford right now. I know Stanford went and beat Notre Dame, but I hear every year it's we've got upper tier Pac-12 talent. We're not seeing it right now. And Saul, you're right. It contextualizes it. It gives context to the fact that this is a nice story. He's kept the boat afloat. They haven't quit on the program, which is what you want to see. And I'm not somebody, and I'll echo Shane's words, that roots for losses. We don't root for losses here at PHNX. Hell no. But at the same time, it gives you clarity. This is not the guy. You watch what Oregon does offensively. The ASU's rumored to be in on their offensive coordinator, who did a fantastic job yesterday, steamrolling UCLA. That's the ballpark that ASU needs to set their sights on. Not let's just status quo, keep the interim guys. So I think losses are not a good thing, but in the grand scheme of things, it may be for the best.
Yeah, there's a very low ceiling with Sean Aguano as far as your future head coach. And, what he brings to the table obviously is something admirable. Obviously these players want to play for him. He's going to mold them into solid individuals, solid adults, and they'll be ready to hit the workforce regardless if it's at, the pro level in football or, whether it's just outside of professional sports. Sean Aguano, obviously, great. He's an easy guy to root for. And obviously the High School Coaches Association is going to root for one of their own to take the reins of a big time program, but it doesn't do much for the program as far as it getting to the next step. And that's something that everybody's saying. ASU, it's a sleeping giant out there in the desert. If it could just get the right, coach in place. And we've been saying that for so long, ever since 1996, Saul. And it just hasn't happened. You have to continue to roll the dice on these guys like a Dillingham, an up and comer, or a guy that's already proven that has been in the living rooms of all these top recruits and won those recruiting battles and put them in a position to succeed. 14-01 in the second quarter. That was the last time they found the end zone. Outside of that, this offense was atrocious. It wasn't just the second half. It was from the second quarter on that they just couldn't do anything.
I saw a tweet yesterday that I thought was absolutely on point. I think it was by Kobe or Cody Martin down in Tucson. Of course, it was a Tucson guy that would do this. But he said, I find it ironic that every high school football coach signed off on Sean Aguano to be the head football coach. Yet in this game, he has a player from the state of Arizona as their quarterback, as a backup quarterback, and he refuses to use him to be able to win the game that he needs to keep the head coaching job. There's a bit of irony there that I kind of find a little humorous. Listen, I'm not going to bag on Sean Aguano. I think maybe somewhere down the road, he'll be able to put himself in a position to be a head coach. I just don't think it's here, and I don't think it's right now. This program right now with ASU specifically, they need more than just a rah-rah guy. It's cool you got all the feels about, I know Arizona high school kids and I know what they want and blah, blah, blah. Cool. that's a nice little, if you want to go to, the Hallmark Channel and say that shit cool. But I don't really care about that. I want to see wins if I'm an ASU fan. I need to see actual results. When you see what Jed Fish did down in Tucson with a 1-win team who was basically, let's just put it as it was a fraudulent win because half of Cal's roster was missing last year due to COVID. And I'm a U of A guy, so like I know. And the fact that he could pull down a number 2 recruiting class in the Pac-12 that following recruiting season, you need somebody to come in and do that. They need to move the needles in that way. Otherwise, you're going to be lost in the sauce. You're going to continue to thrive in mediocrity, and that's what ASU has done since the Bruce Cooper days, as you mentioned there, Bo. So I just think that they need, and I'm not saying they need a big name. I know there's been a lot of big names like Deion Sanders and such thrown out there, but they need somebody who is going to buy in to what ASU and the potential of ASU can be. We've heard the sleeping giant for far too long. Right now, they're just sleeping. They're not even a giant. They're just sleeping.
They need an intellectual. They need somebody who can out scheme and get the most out of the talent because they're underachieving every year. But now it's not even a talent thing. It's just like they have poor coaching and then the talent isn't that great. It's a twofold problem.
Well, I can buy into Coach Prime though. I mean, even though he doesn't, his forte is the defensive side of the ball. He could delegate. He could put people in position to get them coached up enough, and then also win in the living rooms of recruits and in the NIL war. So I think that they have so many different avenues to go that would be more beneficial and perk up this fan base that is looking for anything to cheer for. Even yesterday, I mean, it was, this fan base was distraught over a loss that, it shouldn't have been. And they were inches away, Elijah Badger hauling that in, but they shouldn't have been in that position. They really shouldn't have. It started all the way back early in the second quarter when this offense just disappeared. And then Iguano made the decision to kind of dig in with Emory Jones and say he's his QB1 and stick with that. It was a game that they should have won. And thank God Colorado's on tap, because looking at the rest of the schedule, I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah. Well, besides that ASU game, there was a lot of other games that I thought, we had a tremendous slate of top 25 action. UCLA was proven to be a fraud. Oregon absolutely laid the wood to them. We don't have to talk much about that. They got the shit kicked out of them. UCLA is done. The Pac-12 probably won't have a representative in the CFP now.
No, they
won't. Unless USC and Oregon can maintain only that one loss and get to the end and play in the Pac-12 championship and hope that there's more than just a one-loss team in the SEC. Otherwise, that's a wrap, right? We move along to Texas, Oklahoma State. Guys, on Thursday, I told you there's no fucking way that Oklahoma State was going to lose at home to Texas. No. That's exactly what happened. But Texas was dominant for a large portion of that game. They fell apart in typical Texas fashion.
Did you guys see the line for that game too? It was Oklahoma State was almost a 7-point underdog at home, and they were the higher ranked team. That was so bizarre. It's just people buy into the facade of Texas football and Steve Sarkisian, who's one of the most overrated, overhyped coaches in college football. The second half was not particularly close. I'm happy for Mike Gundy in Oklahoma State, and I'm happy we can stop talking about the Texas Longhorns. The Big 12 in general, I know we put TCU in the title. They were down 28-10 yesterday. That conference, to me, like, I'm punting on that conference this year. I do not think they should have somebody in the Final Four. Clemson's going to get in. They've got the refs in their back pocket, so we talked about it off air. But as far as Texas goes, this is what Steve Sarkisian is. He was like this at UFC. The program continued to erode. Some guys are just offensive coordinators. Can we stop making certain guys out to be head coaches, leaders of programs, when they're better suited not to be that? I think Texas is going to have a rude awakening, because by the time they realize that Steve Sarkisian is not the guy, they're going to be entering the gauntlet of the SEC, and then it's going to get even worse. Their program is going to continue to go into erosion. The recruiting classes aren't that great. And Oklahoma State had a bad interception in the red zone out in the first half. Outside of that, the game would have been even more lopsided.
Yeah. Quinn Ewers, right? He was awful. 19 completions and then 30 incompletions. 30 incompletions. He was 19 of 49. And, he's supposed to be working underneath Sarkisian, and it's not good enough. It's not good. Texas, once again, not back and fraudulent. And Oklahoma State, you look at their future schedule. I mean, it's going to come down to them and TCU in that conference, and hopefully, they don't cannibalize each other. I mean, that's the one thing that's going to stop that conference truly from being involved in the CFP. But yeah, I mean, that Horny Toads win though was impressive.
But before we get to the Horned Frogs,
okay,
all right, the Frogs, we got to talk about Clemson.
Okay,
we got to talk about Clemson because I think it's going to come down possibly to TCU and Clemson for that 4th spot. Let's talk about Clemson and that disastrous game yesterday, especially on the officiating side. Johnny, go ahead, take it away.
Well, I had a 3-leg parlay. I added Syracuse when they were up 21-10, and then I watched the ACC refs be paid off by Dabo Swinney in the second half. It was like the ACC got on the bat phone, the ACC representatives, the higher-ups, and said, we can't have Syracuse win this game, even though they're also undefeated, and they can't beat Clemson because we need a representative in the Final Four of the college football playoff. Clemson has not lost at home since 2013. I found out why yesterday watching 4 quarters of this debauchery. Late hits that weren't late hits, pass interference calls on Hail Marys that weren't pass interference calls. They set up Clemson for multiple scores in the second half. Clemson turned the ball over 4 times. Syracuse turned the ball over once. It was a gross display. I feel bad for Syracuse because they outplayed them, but you have to play a perfect game to win at that building because of the officials, because of what Dabo had, the infrastructure that they have. And let's talk about another big fraud, the Clemson fans. The Clemson fans storming the field as they were the higher ranked team. Get the fuck out of here with that. Like, you've won a national championship. The ACC is a joke. You don't need to rush the field when your team got bailed out by the officials. It made me want to puke yesterday. It was the worst. It's one of my worst losses of the year.
Yeah, it was brutal. It was brutal. And they bring in the backup quarterback because their QB1 just can't hang on to the football. 3 turnovers in the first half. And, they barely even threw the ball. They didn't even have to throw the ball to come back. And that's why I really feel like this Clemson team is fraudulent. You can't, if you don't get decent quarterback play, you can't hang. You get really good quarterback play, and sometimes you can't hang. If you can't get decent play, you're just going to be done. But I agree, Johnny. That was brutal to see on behalf of the ACC to kind of get bailed out for their darling. It was rigged. Yeah, it was brutal. And I want to do a wellness check on our colleague Sean DePaz. Make sure he's doing okay today because his alum got robbed yesterday.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal loss. Listen, you don't ever want to be the guy to replace the man, right? You want to be the guy that replaces the guy that replaces the man, right? And I think that's, DJ Ukulele struggled yesterday big time. And then they brought in Cade Klubnik, and he was serviceable. He just didn't, he didn't really turn the ball over. But on the ground, obviously, Will Shipley on the Clemson side, he's kind of like Christian McCaffrey 2.0 a little bit. He's a solid running back. The problem with Clemson to me is I just don't feel like they have enough on both sides of the ball to really be able to change the game the way you need to when you get to the teams that they're going to have to face in the CFP. They're not going to compete.
Here's what they have. This is the one thing, and you can win like this in the ACC when your talent is better than everybody. They're built to play with a lead because they have multiple first-round NFL pass rushers. But when you play a Georgia or a Tennessee or a Michigan in the first round of a college football playoff, and they're going to jump out to an early lead on you, and you're forced to be one-dimensional and play from behind, you're not built to win that way. We saw yesterday they weren't built to play from behind until the officials got involved. They run up the score. They're 10, 14 points ahead in the first half, and they have 2 first-round defensive linemen, according to Todd McShay and people with the NFL draft scouting community. And then they let their ears pin back, and then they go after people. That's what they did to Clemson in the fourth quarter. They couldn't block, Syracuse. They couldn't block those guys. But the difference is when you face these other marquee programs, they have NFL caliber offensive linemen. So they're beating up on a bad conference. And I would hate to see them represented because we all know what's going to happen to them if they get in. This is not the Trevor Lawrence-esque, Isaiah Simmons-esque Clemson team of 2 to 3 years ago.
So I just want one word: fraud or no fraud. Well, no fraud would be 2 words, obviously, but you just tell me fraud, no fraud on the teams I'm about to list. Ohio State,
No fraud.
Johnny?
No, I don't think they're going to beat Michigan. They're not a fraud, though.
One word. No fraud or fraud?
No fraud.
Which one?
No.
Okay, there we go. Tennessee.
No fraud.
Fraud.
Ooh, fraud, huh? I'm going to say no fraud. Ole Miss, we know, is a fraud. Oregon.
No fraud.
Fraud.
Ooh.
They haven't beaten anybody.
I'm with Johnny. I'm going to say fraud. They did beat. Come on, they beat UCLA. That's good.
They're one losses to Georgia. I mean,
Check out that box score. 49, what? 49-0, 49-7.
Yeah, they got their ass whooped. Oklahoma State.
no fraud.
Fraud.
Okay, and finally, the last team we will talk about, as I mentioned earlier, Bo, the TCU Horned Frogs. Unfortunately, they beat my K-State Wildcats. Ema did not have a good night last night. 28-17 at the half. I thought, oh, man, we got this in the bag. Adrian Martinez is running all over this team. And then TCU, in TCU style this year especially, just put the ball in the air and they did it in all facets of the game, to be honest with you. They dominated this game in the second half, outscored the Wildcats 21-0. TCU is for real, folks. They are a good team. They got it on both sides of the ball. Guys, what were your overall impressions of TCU?
I mean, I just think that if they can make it through unscathed, which is tough. I mean, the remaining schedule is not exactly a cakewalk. I mean, you still have teams that can beat you if you don't show up again. If they, it's not a good way to make a living, falling behind. And I just think, sure, they have the ability to be resilient and come back, but that's no way that you want to go week in and week out. When you've got a couple, programs that have talented rosters down the line, I think as far as just surviving the regular season and then the Big 12 championship, it could just be, I just don't see them sneaking through unblemished.
I mean, I could see them winning the Big 12 and maybe going undefeated like so many Oklahoma teams with Lincoln Riley. But this is the same kind of shtick we've seen from the Big 12 for the last, half decade or so. They were down 28-10 yesterday. They had to rally to come back, but against a real team in a Final Four scenario, and that's what we're talking about. Can they win a national championship? Hell no. I mean, they're on the same level, again, as Lincoln Riley's Oklahoma teams or Cincinnati from last year, where they're a nice story. But, I mean, to me, there are 4 teams. It's the SEC, and then there's 2 teams in the Big Ten, Michigan and Ohio State. That's it in terms of national contenders that can conceivably win a national championship. So I'm happy for TCU, and it's good to see somebody else represent the Big 12, and that's a program that's been down for a little bit, but like a national contender, no way. If they played LSU tomorrow, by the way, who would be favored in that game? LSU, who's a nice team this year, but they have 2 losses. LSU would be a significant favorite.
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think TCU could easily beat LSU. And I would say the money line would probably be a point or 2, which means it's basically a gimme game, right? But I think TCU can easily compete with the LSUs of the world. The problem is when you get in the conversation of Georgia. And because I don't even think Alabama is on Georgia's level this year. No. They're not. Tennessee, however, has the bodies to be able to at least neutralize Georgia to some degree, and they have the offensive weapons to be able to overcome that dominant defense that Georgia displays. The Horned Frogs are a notch below offensively and a notch below defensively. I will give you that. But I think the Horned Frogs on any given day could beat anybody in the country right now, because they do have the talent on both sides of the ball. Listen, they threw for over 250 yards passing. They had over 200 yards rushing yesterday against a K-State team that is wildly pretty solid defensively. Like they just are. Now, unfortunately for K-State, and I kind of fumbled the bag a little bit earlier. I said Adrian Martinez. I meant Will Howard was the one that was out there throwing the ball around and stuff like that. And listen, to come in off the bench after Martinez gets hurt and do what he did, I thought that was admirable. I thought K-State was on a roll, but TCU figured something out with him in the second half, and they shut that shit down. And that, to me, is the biggest change from TCU and all the other contenders, is that TCU showed that they can make adjustments. They did the same thing against Kansas. They did the same thing against Oklahoma State. And both those teams – Oklahoma State was undefeated when they played them. Kansas was undefeated when they played them. And then K-State only had 1 loss, And so the big boys are getting ready to play these guys. And as we know in conference play, you can cannibalize yourself quite often in these conferences. TCU has avoided all those pitfalls so far. I'm interested to see what the last 5 games of the season is really going to hold, because on paper, they beat everybody else that they've needed to beat already.
Yeah. And one thing I think Sonny Dykes is doing is he's showing, what good coaching can do with that type of talent. Like, obviously they're in a huge recruiting area, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're showing like where Texas falls short. Obviously they get the caliber recruits. Oklahoma, with what Venables is doing up there, like not being able to harness the talent on those rosters, so they fall short and they get blown out, where TCU is competing each and every game. But it is going to be a stretch. I mean, I just see West Virginia, Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor, Iowa State, and then the Big 12 championship game. I mean, that's just, all of those games, I could foresee a hiccup.
I could see possibly Texas at Texas, because Texas will have a lot on the line too, with the opportunity to possibly play in the Big 12 championship at that point. But Baylor is not as good as everybody thought they were going to be preseason. West Virginia can be a little dicey in Morgantown, just because everybody doesn't have teeth in West Virginia. And then Iowa State is whatever. And Texas Tech can score with anybody in the country, but they can't stop anybody in the country. And TCU's defense is far better than Texas Tech.
TCU showed you in the second half yesterday that when they want to play defense, they can.
Exactly. And so to me, Texas, November 12th is the one game still left that they have to avoid. If they can get past that game, I really believe that they can absolutely be represented in the CFP. All right. Johnny, you got some cool stuff to talk about. Let's do it.
I do, but real quick, I brought up LSU just because I have to bring up the fact that Jaden Daniels is playing tremendous football for LSU right now, and nobody in this state wants to admit it. I watched him carve up fraud Ole Miss yesterday. I watched Brian Kelly turn Jaden Daniels into a second or third round draft pick. And speaking of draft picks, you can see many of them on display today. NFL action just a half an hour away. Dabble with Underdog Fantasy. Listen, we play every weekend. You can bet the statistics up or down. I'm betting on a lot of unders today, so I'm betting a lot of statistics down. I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers go off. I don't want to see Breece Hall and the Jets offense do well. You can search in the App Store, click on the link in the show notes, sign up with promo code PHNX. Get this, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. I have been on a stinker with gambling lately, so I will take all the free money I can get, and Underdog is ready to cut you some free cash right now. They're going to double your first deposit up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, but you got to use the promo code PHNX to get in on the action today.
We were telling all of our Cardinals listeners to pound the higher on DeAndre Hopkins on Thursday, and I think we won some people some money.
Yeah, you should have. Unfortunately, I missed out on one touchdown reception by D-Hop. Otherwise, I would have won my parlay as well. But that was not on the Underdog app. We'll talk about draft in a second. But when you're watching the games today, obviously you want to relax, kick back, and enjoy a nice, cool, refreshing beverage. And our friends at Four Peaks will give you just that: a peach ale, a Wow Wheat, a Kilt Lifter, whatever you'd like. Go out there, get some of that. Also, this Wednesday is our final Wednesday of the month, and as you know, every last Wednesday of the month we do a Four Peaks Day here at PHNX. So we'll be at Four Peaks all day long. If you want to talk shit, if you want to give us your thoughts on whatever fantasy or whatever betting lines there are, come over and say it to our face, because we'd love to have that conversation with you. And also, we'd like to have a beer with you as well. It's a fun time. Also, this Friday, the 28th, is the Coyotes home opener, finally at Mullet Arena. And you can come hang out with us. It's a free tailgate. You can just come out and have all the beer and all the food you'd like to buy on your own, and have a good time. Like, listen, this is what we do with Four Peaks. We have a lot of engaging events. And so remember, you must drink responsibly, 21 and over only. And that leads us into Survey Says Cerveza.
That was like the most intimidating invite. Like, come say it to our face. Sounded like Russell Westbrook.
Come at me.
Come at me, bro. All right, Emma, what's going on?
All right, so our game today, So pretty much I'm going to show you guys.
Feel that enthusiasm, baby. Let's
Emma's
go.
playing hurt today, audience.
I'm having
liver's
such a
hurting.
rough time. Yeah, it
Put the
is.
team on her back. Let's go.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you guys pretty much pictures of stadiums. You have to guess like which team is like plays there, obviously. Some of them are really easy because the logos are there. Some of them are harder. We got 5.
Okay.
Alright?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So pretty much rules, first of all. Just whoever says it first.
Yeah.
We'll go easy.
Okay.
Ready for the first one?
Yeah.
Mhm. That's where the Ravens play?
Ravens. Yep. All right. Ready for the second one?
Mm-hmm.
Bengals.
Oh, no. Bengals, yeah.
Yeah.
Johnny.
Ooh,
Broncos.
that's Broncos.
Johnny again.
We have to watch another game there again.
Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
Yep. Good
Yeah.
call. God,
Last-
that. Can we just say, keep it right there? That is such a gaudy Ford overhang right there. That's so Detroit, the city. Haven't they been through enough? That's
It's
terrible.
the Ford F-150 overhang right there. Let's
Oh
go.
my God, that is nauseating.
All right. Last one.
Kansas City.
Chiefs.
Yep. Awesome.
All right.
job,
well,
guys.
That was easy and breezy.
Go
All
5
right.
for 5.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Adios.
All right. Well, hey, like we said today, it's NFL Sunday. We got all your props, your locks and drops. Brought to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's #1 sportsbook app. And just a reminder, I know we're going to talk about some NFL football, but it is also NBA season. New customers can make any $5 bet, money line bet, and get $200 if your team wins. You can also boost your winnings up to 100% with the DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. It's simple. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use promo code PHNX. That's promo code PHNX on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. As we talked about that app and we talk about what's about to come up and tap that app, we got your props, we got your locks, and we got your drops. Today, the props. Let's go, Johnny. What you got?
My #1 prop today, and I said this on the PHNX Bets Daily podcast earlier this week, I like Matt Ryan to throw for over 1.5 touchdowns against the Tennessee Titans. Everybody wanted to write off the Colts. But did you see what Matt Ryan did a couple weeks ago against Jacksonville? 4 touchdowns. I think they could potentially be playing from behind. Matt Ryan, to me, has been playing that better than the statistics indicate. They won that gross game against the Denver Broncos on Thursday Night Football. I don't buy the Colts as some big-time contender. But right now, Jonathan Taylor coming back from injury, but running game still doesn't look that great. I think Matt Ryan, either in garbage time or in the first half, gets 2 passing touchdowns. Again, we're all on throttle, myself included, with these running quarterbacks, but Lamar is having a tough time throwing touchdowns. Kyler Murray. Then you look at 100-year-old Matt Ryan, he's getting it done.
I was burned by Matt Ryan earlier this season. I'll never do that again, but I like it. I like it. And I'm kind of going the same way. I'm going to go with the team that's going to be likely playing from behind. It's the Cleveland Browns taking on the Baltimore Ravens. I like Amari Cooper over 4.5 receptions as my prop for the day. When I look at this Browns team, I mean, Amari Cooper had 12 targets the last 2 games, so 24 targets overall. He's going to get just spammed with targets, and I like that. We're going to get a heavy dose of Amari Cooper, then playing from behind. I think 4.5, much like the DeAndre Hopkins thing, 4.5 receptions should be easily attained by good old Amari Cooper.
Guys, I have two props because I just love our audience that much. First, on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, I have the Serious Horsepower Parlay, which is you can get Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry in the same game. Each one of them has to score a touchdown, and each one of them has to rush for over 75 yards. So it's a 4-pick parlay. Each one of those things has to hit, and then, boom, you win your money. And then, finally, you can pick either the highest scored game of the day or the lowest scored game of the game. And since I fucking hate the Packers, I'm going to go with the lowest score game of the day because I do not believe in that fraudulent Aaron Rodgers, the guy who can never come through in the clutch or in the playoffs, one of the best quarterbacks to underachieve in the history of this game. I'm going to go with the Packers versus the Commanders. Lowest score of the game at a +700. Easy money right there. The only other game that could have possibly competed, which could definitely happen, is the Jets versus the Broncos, because I don't know what the hell to expect with the Broncos now with Russell Wilson gone. If they show out today, guys, with the backup ripping, Holy shit. Oh, Broncos country is not going to want to ride with that. I promise you that.
Hey, real quick on the Broncos front, Adam Schefter reporting teams are trying to pry away Jerry Jeudy and Bradley Chubb. Things have fallen fast for the Denver Broncos where teams think they're selling at the midpoint of the season. If they lose today, you talk about just a ripple effect, an implosion of epic proportions. People think you're shitty enough that we're going to call an all for picks for Bradley Chubb. Damn, that's not a good place to be.
You know who could use Bradley Chubb?
How about this team right here?
I'm just saying.
He's gonna end up watching. He's gonna end up in LA.
Oh, Jesus! Don't say that shit.
They don't have any first-round picks.
They tried to get Brian Burns. They offered potentially 2-1s for Brian Burns.
I know, but that's a different 2-1s. That's like 2029 and 2030 2-1s. They don't have any picks.
All right. Give us your lock.
Yeah, the locks for today. I got the Cowboys money line. Dak Prescott is 3-0 against the Detroit Lions in his career. He's dominated that team. The Lions, hey, listen, they could put up a lot of points depending on what day, but I don't think that day is today. I think the Cowboys take a nice, easy cruise to victory today in Dallas.
Ed Warner reported that Dak might have held out for this game knowing he was going to tear apart the Lions. He waited to come back until this game.
Yeah, the vibe's got to be high when you come back, right? So why not the Lions?
I'm looking at my lock, and I still can't figure out how in the wide world of sports that the 49ers are only 1-point dogs against the Kansas City Chiefs after getting dismantled by the Atlanta Falcons last week. You look at the 49ers wins this year, and it's really been against nobodies except for maybe the Rams, but they own the Rams. I am pounding the Chiefs at -1. I think that they roll this. I'm looking at alternate spreads here. Give me the Chiefs. They might have acquired Christian McCaffrey, who's going to play after coming over 2 days ago. He still plays the running back position. Last time I checked, they don't have anybody playing the quarterback position that's worth a shit. Give me the Chiefs. Give me. The
McCaffrey love makes me want to throw up. And I hate the fact that people are like, oh, he's so brave. He went to Stanford. He's going to learn the playbook and gets to play this weekend. He plays running back. The Cardinals picked up Kenyon Drake, and 2 days later, he ran for 100 yards on Thursday Night Football. I had to get off Twitter this weekend because it was so egregious. Like, oh, he's just cramming the playbook with Kyle Shanahan. He's going to get 20 plays. He plays running back.
Listen, the other prediction I have that I feel like is a lock is by the end of this weekend, it will be a 4-way tie for first place in the NFC West at 3-4 with 4 teams. Drops. Yeah,
no, I haven't done my lock. I got to do a lock. Can I have one?
You just did one. Oh, my bad.
No, I don't have one.
Sorry.
And here's my lock, and I think we all can agree on this. Steve Wilkes, not a good coach. They just traded away their best offensive player. Tampa is -13. Swallow the points. Swallow them if they were -20. The Panthers are not going to score an offensive touchdown today against Todd Bowles' defense. They did not score an offensive touchdown last week against the fraudulent Rams. I know they had a pick 6 against Stafford. The Rams covered that line of -10 and then some. Today, it's easily the lock of the century. We're going to watch the Panthers become the Arizona Cardinals of 2018 in the second half when they cannot score points. And Tom Brady and company are pissed off. They lost a bad game at Pittsburgh last week. This has got 30-3 written all over it. Swallowed the 13 points. It's my absolute lock of the week, either college or pro football.
All right. I'm not touching the Broncos today. That's my drop of the day because I don't know what the fraudulent franchise is doing right now. They're probably going to have to swallow $250 million to cut Russell Wilson out to the end of this year and try to take their hopes in the draft. I really feel bad for our DNVR guys who have been out there clamoring for a quarterback for all this. If we only had a quarterback, and then they get a quarterback, and that quarterback has absolutely dropped off the face of the earth and hasn't looked anywhere near what he looked like. They got fleeced by the Seahawks. And if you couldn't tell my sarcasm, well, I can't help you.
I'm dropping the Giants and the Jags. It's two kind of up and coming teams. I believe the Jags are 3-point favorites in this game, and it's just I don't know which team's going to show up each and every week for these two teams. You know, Trevor Lawrence in his second year, Daniel Jones in his fourth year. Daniel Jones might as well be a second-year quarterback. He's so uneven as far as his performances. So I'm staying away from this one.
I'm staying away from the grossest game on the schedule. Raiders at hosting the Houston Texans. Fraud McDaniel. Both teams are off a bye. If anybody believes that the Raiders can cover 7 points against anybody, Houston's a terrible team. They might lose out the rest of the season, but I can't trust the Raiders. I've been burned by Darren Waller in fantasy. The connection between Devontae and Derek Carr does not look good. I'm not, that's the grossest game. I don't want to see it anywhere near red zone today.
I feel you on that. Well, speaking of the red zone, the Cardinals finally got into it as we hit into flight risk, presented to you by the Game Time app. Also, guys, listen, I used the Game Time app for the Thursday night football game, had these choice seats right here, 50-yard line, 25 rows up, had a perfect view of the entire game for less than $120. Like, what? That's crazy. You got to use the Game Time app. We have the link down in the show notes. Click on that app. You can save up to 60% on tickets when you buy tickets at the last minute. It's great for you procrastinators out there. That's exactly what we did. We literally got to the Lola at like 12 o'clock, and I was like, nope, we're not buying tickets yet. We waited and we waited and we waited. And once we got to about 45 minutes from kickoff, boom, made the purchase, and we were in there. It was beautiful. It was fantastic. Great environment. The Cardinals finally showed up offensively. They showed up defensively. I wish they wouldn't have given up as many points to the fraudulent Andy Dalton, but Andy Dalton did reward us by 2 pick sixes, which were phenomenal. Marco Wilson and Isaiah Simmons, respectively, diving into the end zone. Guys, your overall, after a couple days, your overall kind of takeaways on what we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said about the defense. Marco Wilson, Isaiah Simmons changing the game. That's what Vance Joseph said they wanted to do. That was the next step for this defense that's been playing so well since the second half against the Raiders. But the return of D-Hop was for real. I mean, and then some. 10 catches, 103 yards. He had 4 catches for first downs, and also 3 penalties on top of that, where 2 of them ended up in the drive extending into a touchdown scoring drive, and then that 2-point conversion where he was pulled down to the ground. They got the 2-point try again. They were successful. DeAndre Hopkins, just his impact transcended the box score. That offense looked completely transformed. And guess what, P2? We're coming for you next week. Patrick Peterson, he's going to need some OGs, sleep time gummies to get some rest this week, because DeAndre Hopkins coming, and he hasn't missed a beat, guys.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is the fact that everything is working for the Cardinals minus their passing game. And if the passing game includes Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, I'm going to assume it's going to get right, despite Cliff Kingsbury. Eno Benjamin running the football serviceably, catching the football out of the backfield is going to end up as one of the best 7th-round picks in recent memory for this franchise. And then on the flip side, I can't expect Vance Joseph's defense to play stellar every week, especially Thursday night football. At this point in the season, guys are just trying to get out alive. They don't want to tackle. And for Vance Joseph's defense to spot the Cardinals 14 points in the second half, for Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray, who are at each other's throats, to breathe a little bit easier, I am so impressed with what I've seen from Vance and this defense. They don't quit. I don't buy anything into the fourth quarter. I think we're going to get a spirited effort against Minnesota in 10 days, a rested team. And the confidence that these young players defensively are showing. Isaiah Simmons playing almost all the snaps. Marco Wilson, first career interception, and then, of course, first career pick 6. The offense, it's on them now, because we've seen the defense. They've overachieved. They're helping them score. They're flipping field position. And now that D-Hop is back, somebody asked me the other day, what's going to be their final record? What can they get to? Every game is winnable on the rest of the schedule. You could convince me they win any of the remaining games. Can they put it all together? Despite what's happened, I think a good place to be for Cardinal fans.
I think Minnesota is a key game, probably more of a key game than you think on the surface. Listen, the Vikings are a good team. They have a great record, and they're playing at home, which the Cardinals have not traditionally done well in Minnesota with. So I'm not going to go negative, because I did that quite a bit on Thursday on the tailgate show. But what I will say is this, Johnny, you said everything cool until you said the passing game, everything's clicking, despite the fact that Cliff Kingsbury continues to try to hold this team back. And that's my one major concern is when you're going to play a very, very good team, and like the Vikings are right now, they're playing at a high level. Kirk Cousins isn't doing Kirk Cousins things. He's actually playing very, very well. And you got guys like Justin Jefferson on that side of the ball. That'll help, a dynamic receiver. what are you going to do when your team needs you the most? And so that's my only thing that I'd like to see in a close game, against a good opponent. What are the Cardinals going to do, and what is Cliff going to do offensively? I agree with you, Johnny. I don't want to see Kyler Murray throwing for 175 to 210 yards anymore. I need to see 300-yard games again.
Yeah.
I need to see multiple touchdown passes again. I need to see this offense that has the tools and the weapons to be as dynamic as any other in the NFL to start to actually be as dynamic as any other in the NFL. I'm kind of tired of the hope factor, and that's what we are right now. We're just hoping that we get to see what we think we should be seeing, and usually it has not come to fruition. This Thursday night game was a nice step in the right direction, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Well, I think you should feel good if you're a Cardinal fan knowing that Kyler Murray has not played his best football, but he's also not being asked to carry the team. Like in some instances, they have carried him, the run game, the defense. And so it's like if and when that light switch comes on, Bo Brock, for Kyler Murray this season, and we're just going to assume it will because of DeAndre Hopkins' return by default, like everybody else is going to be kind of implemented into their roles now. And maybe I don't want to, bite my own tongue here, but it's like, it's the opposite of last year where they faced adversity early and these units improve and they show they can play. And in the second half, hopefully they hit their stride. That's what you got to hope for if you're Cardinal fans. They figure it out.
Well, I mean, and I can't stress enough the return. I can't stress it enough.
I was delayed.
All right. The DeAndre
Johnny,
Hopkins
right,
being back.
Shut up.
DeAndre Hopkins being back. What it does, it didn't even resemble the offense we saw the first 6 weeks of the season, especially in the red zone, the play to Greg Dortch, them reincorporating Greg Dortch in the offense, him seeing 30-plus snaps, and I would bet that continues to rise, and A.J. Green being shown the sidelines. Like, all the right moves were made personnel-wise, and I think that it's only going to improve going forward. And look, I mean, this was the team, with DeAndre Hopkins and J.J. Watt on the field at the same time. They were undefeated. Like, this team has the ability to do that. But, right, I mean, Byron Murphy's going to have to continue to do what he's done against wide receiver ones, against Justin Jefferson next week. We know what the game looked like against Minnesota last season in week 2. You want to avoid that. You hope that this defense is primed for this game. And then O'Connell is a McVay disciple. What's his game plan going to be? Is it going to be similar to how the Rams have terrorized the Cardinals and Cliff Kingsbury since he came to this organization?
Yeah, there's a lot to be determined, obviously.
Yeah.
Hopefully the Cardinals are on the right side because, as you pointed to, Johnny, historically speaking, the Cardinals have not fared well in the second half of seasons. We're hoping that this is the opposite trend this year, where we started off slow, but we finish off hella strong, which I know a lot of people would be excited about. But if it is anything like the last several years, it could be more troublesome than it is at the moment. So hopefully that's not the case. We all hope that that's not the case. Thursday was definitely a step in the right direction, so everybody's happy to see that. Speaking of a step in the right direction, we're off for the rest of the day, so that's awesome. You can catch Johnny and Bo on their PHNX Cardinal show. They'll be back tomorrow, obviously, because there's no games today, as they get you prepped for the Minnesota Vikings next week. You can join me later on tonight on the PHNX Sun show as the Suns travel to LA to take on the Clippers. And you can find us all here next Sunday, along with Shane Diefenbach, for another episode of the PHNX Tailgate. For Johnny, for Bo, I'm Saul Bookman. Thank you so much for joining us. See you next week.